All right, everyone. Welcome, welcome. My name is Hobbs. Before we jump into the show here, I would like to walk us through a quick land acknowledgement courtesy of Equitable Giving Circle. Um, Multnomah County rests on the stolen lands of the Multnomah, Calumet, and Clackamas bands of Chinook Indian Nation, Tualatin, Kalapula, Molalla, and many others along the Columbia River. This country is built on stolen indigenous land and built on stolen African, or by, my bad, by stolen African people. This land was not stolen and people were not enslaved by ambiguous entities and actors. The land was not stolen by and African peoples were not slaved by white settlers who had governments where they were. You know, today is just a lot. I'm a kid. Just give me a break, please.
You're doing great, Hobbs. Keep going.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. We also want to honor the members of over 400 tribal communities who live in Multnomah County. Many of these people and their cultures still survive and resist despite the intentional and ongoing attempts to destroy them. Let's take a moment to acknowledge the history of how we are here in this space and place and honor these people. I would like to invite you all to take a moment of silence with me. All right, with that, I'm going to pass it over to Mama Donna. Take it away.
Good evening. I need to hear from you, so I'll say that one more time. Unmute and say something. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Hi.
I'm a retired third grade teacher. Those are my peeps. And we'd like to welcome Race Talks and the Equitable Giving Circle would like to welcome you to a candidate forum for Portland Public School District for districts 4, 5, and 6. We're excited to have you here. We've asked all of the candidates to come, and those who were able are part of this discussion tonight. So if you're not familiar with the term BIPOC, some people prefer it, some don't, but it stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color. As an educator of over 40 years experience, I like to work with students who are BIPOC and low income primarily. I feel that they are in need of the best teachers. I feel that they are in need of the most services. And the whole idea of having this program tonight is for you to talk to people who will be making decisions for not only those students, but all students. It's really important that education is equitable across lines. If the students who are considered the least, and that generally refers to students who are BIPOC and poor, if their needs are taken care of, then everyone's needs will be taken care of. And everyone is due a great education. Generally, running for school board is considered an introduction to political, a starting point for politics. And understand that the people who are running for this position have made a huge commitment. I don't think they necessarily understand how much of a commitment it will be before this is all over. Running for school board and being a part of a school board is very time consuming. It's very important, and every decision you make will have a great effect, not only now, but for generations to come. So we're excited that you are here tonight. One of the rules we have at Race Talks is that we agree to disagree. Not everyone can have the same opinion. And so what we have decided is that if you have questions for the candidates, they will all have 90 seconds to answer those questions. And if you have a question, please send it to our Zoom maestro, Caitlin, and she will pass that on. And if people are finding that they are having difficulty, you will all be muted also. And if people are finding that they have difficulty keeping their questions in a user-friendly manner, then you will be ejected from the program. We have never had a problem at Race Talks because we agree to disagree and everyone gets to be heard, but there is a level of civility and respect that we expect everyone to project. We appreciate you being here tonight. I'm going to say up front, I just got my COVID shot, my second one, so I'm not going to stay on tonight just in case. So, but I appreciate you being here. Educators have the second most important job in the world, and school boards are the people who make the rules that the school boards have to follow, that the teachers have to follow. The first most important job in the world is being a parent. Everybody has parents and everyone has teachers, and we're all teachers in the community. So without further ado, I give you the candidate forum. Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Hi, my name is, thanks for the intro, kiddo. My name is AJ McCrary, and I am one of the co-founders and the executive director of Equitable Giving Circle. And I'm also a board member of Race Talks. Want to say a big welcome to everybody that's here, and thank you to the candidates that have made the time to come and let us, the community, get to know you all a little better. A school board is a really important job, as Ms. Donna just mentioned. It is a job that helps really decide how things are going to go for students and teachers. And it's something that us, the community, really needs to get involved in learning about, participating in, supporting, and definitely voting on. So really excited about that we're here today to learn just about your platforms. I'm going to say a quick little thing about Race Talks and EGC. Race Talks is a 11-year-old organization creating community conversations just like this here in Portland, Oregon. It is an organization that has fostered thousands and thousands of conversations and inspired tens of thousands of people across the Portland metro area. This work is so important, and we're learning in real time with the pandemic as so many issues around race, equity, and just community are being, the light is being shed on. And so grateful for organizations like Race Talks creating the space to have conversations. To keep it going, though, we need funding. So everybody who's here, please donate a few dollars and ask a couple friends to donate with you to Race Talks, because this organization is creating real change in our city. And it is one that has laid the foundation of how we create community in new and innovative ways. And Ms. Donna has been doing this work far longer than the 11 years that she has been making Race Talks a thing. And so it's really important that we keep this legacy work going. Ms. Dawn is one of the people that inspire me, and I, like I said, am one of the co-founders, and I am the executive director at Equitable Giving Circle. We feed Black and Brown families with food that we buy from Black and Brown farmers. We have a lot of opportunities where the community can come and get involved with us. So we have an opportunity to volunteer. If you're interested in learning more about our organization and how we are showing up for the community in real time, around resources, holler at our website. But definitely please donate to Race Talks tonight. We would not be here today having this conversation, getting to know our newest, soon to be. One of these people is very much likely to be a school board member. So this opportunity to get to know these candidates wouldn't be happening without Race Talks. So please definitely donate. And again, welcome everybody to this space. Very excited to be here in community with you.
Thank you, Mom. Thank you. Well, we're gonna continue to move on with the show, folks. Hi, I didn't get to introduce myself yet. My name is Hobbs Waters. I'm gonna be one of the co-moderators today to give you a quick sense of who I am. I'm an all-rounded 14-year-old creative Portlander. I create everything from movement to strokes on a painting to new narratives through my lifestyle line, City Troll. I'm a movement maker and I have been this way since I can remember. I'm also one of Race Talk's youngest facilitators, but I hope to change that soon. So if there are any young people on this call, look my name up and you will find my email. I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
Thanks, Hobbs. My name is Chris Reiser, he, him pronouns. I am an educator. I've been in Portland Public Schools now for, this is my 8th year I'm wrapping up. But before that, I spent 7 years preparing for the classroom in the Portland Teachers Program, Rest in Power. And those of us alumni who are still committed to that work are, we're pushing forward and we're continuing to advance equity in the district, individually and collectively. So I'm really glad to be here to be able to facilitate this discussion of with candidates from zones 4 through 6. It's super exciting. So thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be a part of this Race Talks Equitable Giving Circle event. And I'm gonna kick it back over to Hobbs so that he can break down the progressive stack.
Yeah, so progressive stacking order is something that Race Talks recently adopted. It is really just something that we use to make sure that the most marginal voices are being heard. Ms. Donna threw around the term BIPOC earlier, and it's really just to make sure that Black folks, Indigenous folks, and people who identify as people of color speak first. Stacking order also recognizes that people are also further marginalized. So anyone who identifies within this queer spectrum or who is disabled or even marginalized in some other way that I haven't said will also get a chance to speak. But we kind of follow that structure, and then there's structures within that structure that we can follow and move around with too. So that is a nutshell on how progressive stacking order works and what it is.
Did I unmute? There we go. Now I'm unmuted. Thank you. And so now we're going to talk about some ground rules for everyone. So as Hobbs just explained, we're going to use progressive stacking order to start. So each person is going to give their intro using the progressive stacking order that we have set up before we got going here. Then we're going to rotate through. So the first round of questions will use the same order, and then I'm going to rotate through the list of names so that each person gets an opportunity to answer first or in the middle or at the end of the pack. And then the closure will follow the same progressive stacking order that Hobbs described. Just for everyone, so far everybody's in compliance, this is great, but please don't display signs for any school board candidate. Please don't ask for donations to any school board candidates organization. Please don't solicit votes for any candidates. Equitable Giving Circle and Race Talks are not endorsing candidates. We're just all here to host an opportunity to talk about important community issues and the election. As Mama Donna had explained earlier, each candidate's gonna have 90 seconds to give an intro. And then we're gonna, Hobbs and I are gonna trade off asking candidates to respond to questions. And then we'll have time for a Q&A from the audience. So again, if you want to ask a question, you can send a chat to Caitlin Pop with your question, and then she will forward those on to us moderators, and we'll go through those questions as we encounter them. And then to wrap up, each candidate is going to leave us with a 60-second statement, again in that progressive stack order, and then we'll wrap up. Well, thank you for coming. And so just a reminder, right, we're here to focus on BIPOC students, BIPOC families, and issues in the BIPOC community. And we are so glad that you're here. Hobbs, do you want to go ahead and roll the candidates out?
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. First up, I'm going to have you, Jamie, kick us off T-minus 90 seconds to tell us your name, your district, and a little bit about what you're advocating for. That T-minus 90 seconds starts now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Kale. I'm born and raised here in Portland. I went to Madison, now McDaniels High. I have 2 students in PPS. We are a family who's Black and Indigenous. We live in North Portland. I have a long history of being an advocate in this district, and I feel like, you know, I have many layers. I wear many hats. I'm a community organizer. I'm a mom. I work in a school. I've been around the district my whole life, essentially. So I feel like my combination of the hats that I wear is the reason why I deserve to be on the other side of that podium. I know how to ensure that our children, our BIPOC students especially, are, you know, given the chance to be more successful. I think we have to change the model of children being ready for school, and we need to change it to the schools are ready for them, especially when it comes to Black and brown children. We are not ready to teach our children to be all they can be. We are holding them back. Essentially, we have racist policies that are holding our kids back. It's time to change those. And considering that I am a community organizer, the only thing I know how to do is to act. I'm not a talker, I'm a doer. I am in the schools today. I am here ready to do the work today. So I will be the real change that PPS needs, and I vow to continue to use my voice to fight for equity in our district. So write me in for Zone 4.
Thank you for that. Wonderful, wonderful. And we're happy that you're here, and we're happy to hear more from you. I'm going to pass it over to Brooklyn. Same thing.
Hello, I'm Brooklyn Sherman. I'm also running in Zone 4. I'm a Jefferson graduate from 2020. I got pinned. And I also really want to advocate for special education. I believe special education is a BIPOC issue, especially with how many BIPOC children are in our current SPED program. I'm also concerned with TAG. We need to, you know, luckily we have been improving testing on TAG and the technology. I think it's sad and honestly not okay that it took a pandemic for us to start handing out Chromebooks and hotspots to the children. I believe we need to expand this program and really work on technology, especially the technology divide in our schools going forward. And that's about everything.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I'm going to actually pass it over to Gary now.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Gary Hollins. I am a lifelong Portlander, born and raised right here in Portland, Oregon. As a husband and father and son and a business advocate, you know, I feel that I understand what it needs for our kids to reach their full potential. Growing up through the system and being a proud alumni of Portland Public Schools, I do realize there's a lot of work to be done. 3 things that I plan on focusing on is expanding the career, technical and vocational education course offerings for our students, otherwise known as CTE. I am also looking to close and address the academic gap in reading and math for our Black and brown children, and also want to increase the racial and cultural diversity of staff to reflect the kids that we serve. So that's a little bit about me. I do want to spend a little bit of my time. I told Mr. Green that I will let him know that Mr. Herman Green, who is running for Zone 4, could not be here. He's actually getting ready to do a COVID vaccine clinic on Saturdays, but he do want to send his thanks for inviting him here, and he wish he could be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to pass it over to Libby. Same thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Libby Glenn. I'm running in Zone 6. I was born and raised in Portland, Oregon, in Montevilla, where I still reside. My child is in 5th grade Spanish immersion at Bridger School. I graduated from Benson Polytechnic in 1999. I'm most concerned with how the engagement gap between BIPOC and white students has remained around 50% for decades. That drastically needs to change. Possibly we need to be seeking teachers that look like BIPOC students, even if we're going outside of the state to recruit teachers. In high need schools, we need to better train administrators and teachers and probably give them additional pay as
30
well.
seconds.
But yes, running in zone 6. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And Julia, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Julia Brim-Edwards. I'm a candidate in Zone 6. I want to thank Race Talks for this opportunity tonight. I want to roll here. I grew up in Portland as well. I went to Glencoe Elementary, was a K-8, and then graduated from Washington Monroe High School. I spent 7 years in Washington, D.C., and then I moved back to Portland specifically so my kids could go to public schools and have some of the same opportunities that I had. I had 3 kids, so I spent the last 25 years either as a classroom volunteer, as a parent activist, working both to improve our schools generally, but also advocating in Salem for better funding so that our students and teachers like Chris would have the supports they need for our students. I served on the school board in the early 2000s, and then in 2017, when the wheels were coming off at the central office, I ran again, and I have chaired the 2020 school bond, and I'm interested in continuing my work on the board to advocate for more equitable access and outcomes, especially in the middle grades. In my zone, or our zone, there's not a lot of equity in the middle grades. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And Max, you're our last guy. So the pressure is on. No, I'm joking. But
Okay.
Go ahead, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Hi, my name's Max Margolis, and I was born in Scotland and I was raised in Pittsburgh, so I apologize. But I am a product of very diverse schools. I grew up in Pittsburgh, went to East Hills Elementary, had a Black principal, changed my life from 1st grade to 5th grade, regularly had Black teachers, lots of Black students, middle school, my dean, my science teachers, my language arts teachers, and all the other students. I'm a product of a diverse education, and I think that has been so valuable for my life, and I hope to help Portland do that. Because my daughter, she's now in 7th grade. She has never had a Black academic teacher in her whole time in the schools. That seems just crazy to me as someone who was raised with very diverse schools. I am running because I think I can show what that represents, and I appreciate Race Talks putting on this forum, and I look forward to discussing my point of view further as we go along. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. All right, so now we're going to transition to the Q&A piece of the show tonight. And I'm gonna kick us off, and this is just a question towards Jamie and then anyone else who wants to jump in. So here we go. All right, so we know that when curriculums are culturally geared for students, we see higher outcomes and success rates. Considering that there is about a 20% gap of success rates between Black and white students, according to PPS data, what policies and practices will you advocate for to ensure Black kids are successful?
The first policy is obviously to get educators that look like them, so that when they're learning their material, they see themselves reflected in the material. Learning about genocide from a teacher who looks like them is a lot different than learning about genocide from a teacher who's white. I believe, unfortunately, the Portland Teacher Program, which was wonderful and brilliant, and the fact that it's not the same program, I think we need to, either make a similar program or figure out a way to make that work again. I think it was a wonderful way to get Black and brown educators into classrooms. So we definitely need to figure out that again. And then from Another policy perspective, I think we need to make the curriculum itself more diverse. I'd say 90% of what kids learn in social studies is about the whiteness and colonialism in the United States and around the world. It's not reflective of what we live through. People who look like me, it's not reflective of, my children's ancestors. It's really
30
reflective
seconds.
of, whiteness. So let's get rid of the whiteness and, come in with a broad stroke and add some Black and brown ethnicity studies in there. There's no reason not to.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. Any of the other candidates want to jump in on this question? And if you want me to, I can repeat it too.
I'll have a couple, one comment with that. I agree exactly what Jamie is saying, especially around the cultural relevant instruction piece. I think that is a piece that is missing. It was missing when I was in school. It was missing when my mom was in school, and it's missing now that my kids are in school. So I think the cultural relevant instruction is a huge piece. And with that instruction, I think we need to make it more modern to the kids that we're serving now, and not the kids that was back in 1950s and 60s. I use an example of, when I was in school and in my business classes, they always talked about widgets. And to this day, I still don't know what a widget is. But if we can make those instructions, that curriculum more relevant to today's, and when we're talking about like math or we're talking about different things, you can bring in stuff like Instagram posts. How many Instagram hits did you get? You start bringing it to where they're at right now, and you get a lot more engagement with our youth. Thank you.
I'll chime in if that's okay. I would like to add, I'm a reading tutor. I work with 1st through 4th graders in various, right now, Portland schools, because I've been doing it online. And elementary wise, before we get to all the heavy stuff, we really need to teach reading and writing and math, because the reading is how we're going to articulate and be able to understand different point of views to make life interesting for students. We have to teach that basic skill and make a broad commitment to that, because if you look at the 3rd grade reading levels, they're not where they need to be. And every study out there tells you that if students aren't reading by 3rd grade, their outcomes later in life are not as positive. So we've got to really make a commitment to the basics before we do the great things that we want. And if you want students to be engaged in this discussion, you need to provide them with those tools so they can participate.
30 seconds.
So on a policy level, I would like that to be, this is, and I know the board goals do state that, but just to really make it clear to the public that 3rd grade reading is absolutely essential for us to move forward as a society. So thank you.
Awesome, awesome.
I'll jump in too. First thing, I'm a lover of the widgets, Gary. They're just a word they implant for anything economic related. I'm just really like econ, so I'm sorry, Gary, I just had to mention that. And to this actual question though, I think it's also we need to train the teachers to be better about these issues as well. And I think we can do this via the continual education credits that we have the teachers do here in the state of Oregon. So I want for the continual education credits, and obviously this is way above, Portland School Board. This would be something I would have to ask people down in Salem to do. And first, we have to start the discussion on it. Is ask for a part of the continual education credits that teachers with their continual education credits would take classes in racial justice. And on top of racial justice, I also want them to take classes in special education.
Yeah, I'll add in. I'm not going to cover what Jamie talked about the diversity of the staff, but that would be the number one thing to start with. She did a great job talking about that. Another thing that I think the district could do way much better, and we have a real opportunity, is the bond that passed last November had about $60 million in it for new curriculum from kindergarten through high school in all subjects. And that's an opportunity for us to sort of turn the page from the 70s, 80s, or 90s, and whatever year that we bought those classroom materials and textbooks, and really have the materials that our kids are working with every day in classrooms reflect the much richer, more diverse history and community that we live in. In addition, we have an opportunity with the bond also earmarked $60 million for the Center for Black Student Success. And I'm looking forward to the community conversation about how we're going to make that investment in all the schools in historic Albina.
Thank you.
Just going off of what Julia was saying, and I agree with what Jamie said as well. But yeah, it's unfortunate that Portland Public Schools took so long to update its curriculum. I mean, it let it slide for decades. I'm glad that money was earmarked in the 2020 bond. But I think it's important for all students to learn about Black history, all students to learn about Indigenous history. I know my child has really enjoyed learning about Indigenous history this year, and that has done wonders for her, considering she does have Indigenous blood. But I think it's important for like all students to learn about the very rich history. It's not just about white history, and it has been, unfortunately, mainly about white history in this country.
Yes, agreed. Thank you. And I'm gonna actually pass it over to Chris to introduce our next question.
Thank you, Hobbs. Okay, so my next question, and then just a couple of quick points of order. If candidates would let us know, the audio might be a little bit disruptive, but you guys have a full 90 seconds, and the interjection of that voice is only to let you guys know how much time you have left. But we also understand that might be kind of freaking you out a little bit. So would folks prefer that we just type the time in the chat? Would that be a little bit better?
I personally like the voice.
You like?
I like the voice too, because I'm not watching the chat.
Okay.
I'm neutral.
I'm good with whatever.
Okay. All right.
Well, we'll kind of get used to the voice.
Yeah, it's an adjustment. So yeah, okay. So we'll keep the voice. Just know that doesn't mean that time is up. Okay. And yeah, so the next question, we're going to start in the progressive stack this time with Gary, and then we'll open it up to other folks. So here's the question, round two. How do you see the balance of the PPS budget in terms of the dollars going to positions in central office compared to the dollars allocated to schools and classrooms? So Gary, take it away after you've had some think time, and we'll start your timer once you start speaking.
All right, I'll go. That's a great question. And as I don't know the full PPS budget as of yet, I'm actually learning about that. I actually was just talking with Scott Bailey yesterday morning about the budget piece, and he kind of broke down the percentages of that. Before I knew that information though, I always felt that my wife, she worked for PPS, and she knows me and her go back and forth with it. I always felt that, the admin office folks made way too much than what the teacher's making. Now, I know that's not a popular thing to say, but that's how I felt beforehand. As I was talking with Scott and learning more about the budget, he actually really broke it down to what real percentages the admin staff was actually getting compared to the overall budget. And by me learning what that was, really made me realize that it wasn't an issue of whether it's admin versus our teachers and what they're getting. I think it's more of a budget issue of what Salem is allocating for a true education. And I think that's what we really need to look at is how do we get Salem to allocate more money for our kids in general? When you look at schools on the west side, like a Jesuit or Central, where they're spending $15,000 per kid, and we're averaging between 7 to 10 grand per kid, there's the inequities right there.
That's time, Gary.
Thank you.
Yeah, adding on to what Gary was saying, I agree with everything he said. And yeah, we have to put more resources into our students. And that's not just us. We have to convince other groups like the state, like the county, like the federal government to give us more money to invest in our schools. And a part of that is by showing that we can handle our money well, by not doing things like with the lead pipes. I was drinking lead for 9 years myself. We have to, also giving the kids Chromebooks, giving them hotspots. If you guys saw my League of Women's Voters video that we all did, I kept on cutting out. I was using a Portland public hotspot. I'm going to blame the hotspot for why I was cutting out. And we really do have to make sure that we invest more money into the children. And I think it's via raw resources like technology.
Thank you, Brooklyn. Who else would like to speak to this? Floor is open.
Well, I would like to point out that, like Gary says, we need to get more money from Salem to our kids. But what you do with that money once it gets to us is all on the board and the superintendent. There's no reason that we need our superintendents and hire people to make 5 to 7% raises every year. I don't make that. I work down in a school building and I don't make that raise every year. We get a cost of living raise. We don't get a performance-based raise, even if we're doing great. Even if we get all of our kids, we could have 100% of our kids reading by 3rd grade. We're not going to get a raise for that. We're not going to get a bonus. So we need to figure out how to get our teachers who are getting burnt out because they're teaching the most impoverished Black and brown students who are struggling. They need the raises more than the people in the district office need the raises.
So I'll jump in. To Gary's point, the vast majority of our resources do land in schools, and I think that is in many cases because historically we've had a lot of parents on the school board and who have been advocates of the place where the money has the biggest impact in our kids' lives and students' lives is in the classroom. And so I do think there definitely it's more tilted to the classroom. I know it doesn't feel like that when teachers are paying for things out of pocket or school staff are buying things that they don't, especially in schools where there isn't a foundation or a PTA with a big budget. So I always favor, if had to make a choice between the classroom or schools and the central office, to choose schools.
30 seconds.
We had a case of that 2 years ago when the superintendent's budget proposal would have cut a lot of teachers, specifically PE teachers and adaptive PE teachers. I suggested that instead of the central office staff making over 100,000 getting COLAs, that we could pay for PE teachers and adaptive PE teachers. And eventually that was the outcome, but I'm always going to support classrooms over central office.
Thank you, Julia.
I pretty much agree with what people are saying. I think philosophically is how I want to talk about the budget is it obviously has to go to the classroom, but as a taxpayer, you want to make sure that the district can demonstrate that they're good stewards of the money. And some of my concerns are with the overall vision for the school district coming out of a consulting group from California and trying to see what that price is. Is that homegrown? Is that reflective of the community? So making sure that the public documents that guide the school district are reflective of the community, and those dollars for vision statements and strategic planning are invested in the community as well.
All right, Libby, did you want to?
Yeah, you know, it is an issue with the state of Oregon that they have underfunded and not done their job by not, it is the Oregon Department's Education's job to oversee each school district, but they are essentially not doing their part. There has been complaints that, you know, retirement parties that, you know, had $13,000 spent on them a couple years in a row, that's something that's problematic. A complaint that too many administrators at the district level are making over $100,000 a year. What are your teachers making? Not anywhere close to that. But yeah, I do think that we need to make sure that more of these dollars are going directly to the schools and to the students, and less waste at the administrative level.
Excellent, thank you. All right, Hobbs, you want to jump on the next question?
Yeah, I can do that for you. So the next question is, 2020 has shed light on the unsafe spaces that our Black students are expected to learn in, from collapsing buildings to faculty. Ooh, and I wrote this question too. Faculty who harm Black kids through racist attitudes and practices. This lack of safety takes a mental toll on our students. In 2020, we have seen an uptick in Black kids pulling away from PPS to find alternative learning spaces that better meet their needs. What are you going to do to make sure that our classrooms are safe, equitable, resources are allocated accordingly for Black students that set them up for success? And if Brooklyn wants to take this one away.
Yeah, I'll take it away. No, we really do need to make sure our schools feel safe, and especially as school shootings and other issues rise in our country. I was in a school shooting once. They're terrifying. It is not a comfortable experience. And I think a part of that is also, I guess I'm going to do a little 180 here, talk about counselors. I think part of it is that these kids need more one-on-one time with educators. And that's what a counselor is, someone that should be there for one-on-one conversations with the children. And I personally had to rely on a PCC counselor to do my scholarships, to apply to everything I needed to do. And a lot of children aren't going to have that PCC counselor. My campaign manager, for instance, he never spoke to his counselor once in the 4 years he was in high school. And that's crazy. And so when he went off to go to college, he just went to college, PSU, being like, this is what I think I'm supposed to do. And no one had helped him. No one had guided him correctly. And I think to solve this problem, we need the counselors to be spending more time one-on-one with the children at grade school, middle school, and high school, and really understanding what the child needs individually. And to do this, you are going to have to train the counselors, really make sure that they are doing this. They are spending that one-on-one time with the children, not just goofing off or sitting in their office. And we also, am I cut off?
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, anybody else who wants to take it from here?
Hobbs, could you repeat the last part of it one more time?
Yeah, I can. So in 2020, we have seen an uptick in Black kids pulling away from the PPS system to find alternative learning spaces that better meet their needs. You want to keep going?
Yes, please.
Okay. What are you going to do to make sure that our classrooms are safe, equitably resource spaces for Black students that set them up for success?
Thank you. Might as well go. There's some macro issues around here. Some of our Black and brown children are honestly moving because parents can't afford to live in the neighborhood anymore. So we're losing our students by droves to more affordable areas, which are not Portland. So I think macro level, definitely we need to work on I think the district needs to do a better job of working with the city and the county on trying to work on affordable housing and to keep our kids here. And then in the actual classroom, I agree with my colleague there, Brooklyn, we need more wraparound services. We need social workers, we need counselors, and they need to be trained on how to work with kids who are experiencing trauma, because a lot of our children are living in homes that aren't necessarily safe either. So their safe place is school, and it is where their teacher is every day, and it's where they get their warm meal every day. So having more counselors, more social workers to help with resources, and then
30 seconds.
Also the classrooms don't necessarily meet the needs of kids who don't fit in the box. Like the easy to learn, everything's easy for me, they don't fit in that box. So having different kinds of seating, different kind of learning opportunities. Not all kids want to do a worksheet, not all kids can listen verbally and just do a quiz. Having all those opportunities. So teacher training to provide different kind of learning styles, safer, comfortable classrooms, and overall resources and services for all of our students.
I'd like to just add a little bit into that. I, as a kid who, like I said, grew up in a rather chaotic home, I believe school is the safety net. It is the predictable place where anybody can come in and be a student and learn. And it's the school's job to provide that opportunity, that it's a learning environment, and that this is what's expected of you. I've worked at David Douglas School District, Reynolds School District, Portland Public School District. When I was younger, I had an after-school project at Jefferson High School. I've also worked in schools in Yamhill County in different capacities with different kids, but students like to learn, and there's different approaches to it. Have para educators to help with students or with kids, however the teacher can organize the classroom for maximized learning is great. But the expectation when you come into a school building
30 seconds.
The expectation is to learn. And we're going to provide you all these avenues and different things to learn about that are interesting, engaging, reflective of who you are. And it's sort of salesmanship. And that's what good teachers do. And good teachers always provide that safety net and that security for students because they're looking for predictability and security. And we can provide that in a smart way. And I believe most teachers do that. Thank you.
I'll just add in some, I think, really valid points that have already been raised. But I would also add that we need a more diverse staff at all levels. So there's a welcoming culture and climate. In 2017, when I walked into Roosevelt and talked to Renee Mitchell, she was the only Black teacher at the time. And that just has to change, because if we don't have a welcoming culture and climate in our schools and students seeing themselves in the adults in the school, it's not very welcoming. Also, I think we need to really pretty dramatically change the district's practices and policies around discipline. There's all kinds of data that show that discipline is disproportionate to students of color, and that has all kinds of negative implications for how they learn. They get removed from the classrooms, they're not getting instruction, and having just long impacts on
30 seconds.
Significant impacts on students of color. And the last thing I would say is there's a lot of conversation from some of the wider, wealthier schools about the disproportionate resources that are going to schools that serve Black, Indigenous, and students of color. And as a district, we need to stand up and say that we need equitable outcomes, and that may lead to that we are putting a lot more resources in some schools. Thank you.
Libby, Gary, you want to go?
Yeah, yeah, I agree with the sentiments of everyone who's spoken already. We have generations of people that have been raised by white supremacy, and we have to basically re-educate everyone, including from the district on down. Needs, yeah, additional training around BIPOC sensitivity issues. You know, I've had requests, you know, to find a speaker for microaggressions, because there's teachers that I know that administrators have complained about the microaggressions of white parents towards them. That's extremely problematic as well. But yeah, we have to start somewhere. And I think, you know, providing additional trainings for the school district as a whole from the top down is a good start.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else want to go touch on this? No? All right. I'm going to pass it over to Chris now. He can pose our next question.
All right. Okay, so the next question, and we're going to start this time with Libby and then open it up. As a director, how would you use your time on the board to increase the sense of inclusion for Black, Indigenous, and educators of color as a means of both retaining and attracting said educators?
Well, when I left, I went to college in Dallas, Texas. And one of the first weeks I was in school, I noticed that I walked through the community union center, and there was a table set up for the Portland Police Bureau, and they were recruiting 2,000 miles away from Portland. So, you know, I'm like, maybe that's an option for education. Maybe we should be recruiting for BIPOC educators outside of Portland. And, you know, I think that, you know, sitting on the board, yeah, as a white woman, I hope that the faces of the board change and that there will be some changes happening. But yeah, I think in a very white city with a very racist history, you know, people have felt excluded. I know, you know, teachers of color and coaches of color that have felt
30
like the
seconds.
system that's been set up has been really unfair and is not working for people of color.
Yeah, I'll chime in on this one as well. I think one thing we need to do is we need to listen to the teachers that are not here and find out what the issue was. I think as we're listening, you know, having listening sessions with our teachers of color to find out what does it look like for what that support looks like. What is it for the ones that left? Why did they leave? I don't think it's necessarily a problem necessarily just hiring them, but retaining them as well. And until we really understand why, and then bring policies of that in order to address that why, then we're going to always have this mass exodus of teachers of color, and that's just where we're at right now. You know, we had a listening session with some alumni from PTP, you know, a couple of days ago, and they had some real concerns. They had some really good ideas of how to retain the teachers that we have. And so I think by really listening to them and then bring that back to the board and then frame our policies around the input we're receiving from them. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to pop in. I think I've been in really white spaces my whole life myself, and I think they're lonely. So one way to ensure that we keep the people that are teachers of color are to put them with other teachers of color so they can talk, they can plan, they can vent, they can just be safe in a safe space and be who they are and talk about their curriculum, how they want to talk about their curriculum. So the district providing time in a teacher's paid workday to be with other teachers of color is one of the first and easiest steps, I think, to make teachers feel like they're in a safe space and that they're valued and listened to. And also, you know, loan forgiveness, stipends for extra curriculum, go a long way. So really listening to our teachers, valuing their opinions, valuing that they do need to be around people who look like them, and also paying them for that extra labor, because guaranteed, if you're a teacher of color in a really white school, you're the diversity committee. So paying them for that work, and also hooking them up with other unfortunate single souls that are the only BIPOC person in that school that are also having to run diversity committees. So, you know, recognition, listening, all the things that everyone wants in life. Just do those things and do them well.
I'm just going to add on to that because that was great. I think I would also extend it, not just teachers, but principals. Over the last 5 years, there's been an exodus of Black administrators and principals to other districts, and they talk about the isolation, and I know it's in some ways it sounds very similar to what I hear from many Black teachers and teachers of color, that they also feel isolated. And so recognizing that, I also think as a board, as a current board member, that the board needs to do a lot more listening to learn. And that doesn't often happen. And we had an example of that last night at the board meeting. I do think that I'm really optimistic about the board next year. Whoever from our zone is on it, that they're going to be joining a more diverse board. And I think that will make a big difference. The board I served on in 2000 had 3 individuals of color on it, and we had very different conversations than a board in which you have just one person.
Great, thank you, Julia.
I'm gonna add on to that too, because when we all got an hour to speak with the superintendent, and I asked him about this issue, and he explained to me that he sometimes personally goes and does the recruitment at colleges, and it's not just about getting. I think it's not just about getting the BIPOC teachers interested. It's about getting them interested in Portland as a city, not just with our schools, because as I heard too. Portland is known for its long history of racism. It's a very heterogeneous city of Europeans, and that is scary. And Portland's also very expensive to live in. And we need, if we're going to want these BIPOC teachers in our buildings, we're going to need to set up policies to help them not just get used to our school buildings, but get them used to our city, because we live in a very unique city that's not like many others in this country, and we need to educate get them used to our city as a whole. And ideas by pairing them up with other BIPOC teachers is the way to do stuff like that, because we need to do something. It's not just the schools they need to get used to, it's our unique crazy city.
Thank you, Brooklyn.
I'd like to just say, in terms of, I think it is a citywide struggle. First, to recognize that Portland has some great Black leaders. Back in 2003, Lou Frederickson, came and talked to the Jefferson students. We have our police chief, the Portland State Police Chief. We have great leadership, and we need to recognize that. And what happened in the past that chased that leadership away. I haven't said this, but this seems like I'm a Jewish guy. When I moved to Portland and started doing presentations, that seemed to be another identifier. Whereas like when I grew up, it was just like, I grew up around a lot of Jewish and Black people. And I think it's a real struggle for Portland. It can't just be on the district. But I think a lot of times, maybe a teacher just wants to be the teacher and have good curriculum to do that, and to have that standard, and to make that the welcoming part of the school, is not to always be leading with your identity, but with your skill. And I know that's a complex, conversation, but it is something that is ongoing. In different places, and even at my work, we're constantly talking about that as reading tutors to be more reflective. But Portland does struggle with the race issue deeply, more so than some other cities, I believe.
That's time.
Thank you. I believe everybody's responded to that question. Hobbs, you got another one? And before I pass it back to Hobbs, actually, I just want to say that Donna Maxey, Miss Donna, had to leave, but she wanted to thank everybody for being here, both those who are speaking and those who are listening. Hobbs, you got another question?
I do. So the next question is, when you're in this leadership role, how will you center and listen to students and hold their best interests without sending your own agenda? How will you avoid saviorism? And Julia, do you want to kick this one off?
So the way that I've always done that is to try and get into schools as much as possible, because I think our students, they're authentic, they're direct. If you ask them and you're willing to listen, they will tell you what they're thinking, and they will tell you what you can do better. And I find that for me, that's always the best way to stay student focused, because often conversations at the district become adult focused and about adult needs. So for me, it's like getting into schools, and this has been a really tough year because we haven't been able to get into schools. It's not quite the same thing as to pop into a classroom virtually than it is to just spend time in a school building
30 seconds.
and talking to students. So that for me, that's the best way. And like I say, I find students, if they think you're going to listen and do something about what they say or what they need, they're like truth tellers. That in some ways adults are way too diplomatic. They're Portland nice or polite and diplomatic, and students, if they think you're going to be their advocate, they will like create a list for you. So for me, that's always been the best way.
I'll chime in a little bit on this one. It was interesting. I was just talking with, I believe it's the district student council. And, the district student council is but our youth that represents our schools. And they had a very interesting relationship with our board. And one of their concerns with the board was they did not feel that the board was taking them seriously. For instance, that one of the suggestions were, when these committee meetings and that they're on, that they don't get a vote. And they said they asked the board, well, why can't we vote at a committee meeting? And they haven't really got an answer. So I think, as we're listening to them, it's not just listening to them, but it's actually having actions behind the listening. If we're learning from them and then just ignoring them, that's not listening to learn. But being able to listen to what they're saying and implement something like, well, let our students that are on these committees, let them have a committee vote. Little things like that we can do, and we have the power to do. Thank you.
I've really been advocating for increased community forums because I think this is really important. Along the lines of what Gary was saying in terms of the student council not feeling heard, I think there's large amounts of the community overall that's not being heard, whether they're a teacher or a parent or an administrator. I think there's a lot of frustration and lack of communication, and that we need to do what we can. Often, even though sometimes we'll listen to high school students, but are we inquiring like with middle school students? They have a lot of great thoughts. They have, they're able to think outside of the box because they haven't been stuck inside the box so long. So I think that, if we could do community forums by zones on, even if it was on a quarterly basis, that we need to engage overall the community,
30
whether
seconds.
it's students or other community members, other stakeholders. We just need to engage them more, and the board needs to be listening to them. And yeah, respond.
I'd like to take a shot at this question. Definitely community forums are a way to go. But the tenet of the community forum is to go to the community that you want. You don't expect them to come to you. And you also stress that it's a we, not a me. It's a we do this together. What do you need and what can we do as a community, including you, to help you, to assist in getting what we need to be successful? So definitely not centering myself, but centering the community that I'm trying to work with. There's no community that needs to be rescued. There's communities that need to be given additional resources so that they are at equal footing, but there's no communities in our city that needs to be rescued or saved. They sometimes don't have the opportunities that other people have. So giving the opportunities are probably, I think, the best way to ensure that we can kind of try to get everyone to the same start line, because right now we're not, there's a start line and then there's
30
several
seconds.
people back who don't get to be at the same starting point. So I don't want to save a community. I don't want to rescue anyone. I want to work with communities to make sure that they have the resources they need to be successful.
I think it would be a great start if we could have some good extracurricular activities. Am I on? Sorry, I can't hear anything. Oh yeah, I think it would be a great start if we could have some extracurricular activities for students. I think having a place for them to go after school. When I was in middle school and elementary school, we had sports teams or after school programming that was done through the school, not just, community partners, and you had to fill out another form. It was just easy. So creating more opportunities for kids to easily and families to easily engage with the community. Not everybody wants to, very few people want to engage in a policy discussion with the school, but they want to see that the school is demonstrating a commitment and caring for their students through providing them a place, sports activity, drama, something. And I think sometimes we've lost sight of that in the schools.
30 seconds.
That we just lack extracurricular interesting activities for students to do. When I did my project at Jefferson High School, we engaged a lot of freshmen and sophomore students in the after school film project with Northwest Film Center. So they learned how to make movies and they focused on their community and they got to ask different questions like that. So making, I think there's some easy low cost solutions that the district can advocate for to make it better for everybody.
I guess I'll go. I think it's also, this issue involves a lot of the fact that when you're on the school board, you're not getting paid. You have to continue working. Like how Brim Edwards works at Nike. You got to keep on feeding yourself to make the bills, keep the house and everything. And I think I'm very fortunate in the fact that I can rely on my parents to feed me and house me while I do this. And yeah, it's just, we need the school board members to spend more time in the schools. And it's just oftentimes they can't because they have jobs and other obligations outside of school board. And I think we should start asking that people who are running for school board who want to be on school board are willing to dedicate, I think, 60+ hours a week, because you're going to the meetings, and I would be in the schools when the kids are in the schools. So, the second they come in at 8 in the morning, and the kids stay in schools afterwards. I would always go to SCI and stuff myself. And you gotta be there talking to the kids, going to the different schools constantly. And it becomes a huge problem, though, that oftentimes the people on the school board, have to feed themselves.
10.
Thank you, Brooklyn. I believe, was that the last question or the last response? Everybody had an opportunity to respond to that last question, yes? Okay, so we're going to transition. Those were all the questions that Hobbs and I had come up with. And so we're going to transition to a couple of questions before we give each of the candidates time to make their closing statements. So the question that I would like to ask is, it's one that came from, we had to massage it a little bit and broaden the question so that everybody could participate. So to the panelists who are here who identify as white or of European descent, the question for you is, how will you engage communities of color beyond family and friends in order to understand the needs of BIPOC community members? To panelists who identify as BIPOC folks, how will you engage your colleagues who identify as white and of European descent in order to advance the work of equity at the board level? And we're going to begin this one with Max.
This is such a hard question because I think it's just being a human being and being open and genuinely interested. My life experience, I mean, I had a Black roommate in college. I don't know how it's so complicated. When I had cartilage in my knees, I played basketball at Laurelhurst, and you seek out these interactions and you're just interested. You can, you know, hang out by the Lloyd Center. You've got to like just be curious and open and to new ideas. And I think I'm just that kind of person. And, you know, I struggle in Portland because it is so segregated, but a lot of cities in this country and the world are not like this. And I think just demonstrating the commitment of who I am, being authentic, acting with integrity, being curious about where people are from is how I always approach life. And I think it's a good approach. And I think it's just natural ability to relate to people. So, you know, like I have a lot of neurosis. I think a lot of people relate to that. I could, you know, do that. And I've, you know, in all seriousness, I'm seeing what happened recently, you know, with the Nazis desecrating, you know, the Holocaust Memorial up in the center. There's a lot of problems, but I'm just an open person. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Opening it up. Who else would like to respond?
After discussing prior the community forums that I think would help engage particular communities that don't feel like their voice is being heard, but also hearing from BIPOC administrators and BIPOC coaches and BIPOC teachers, you know, and having like roundtables with them to discuss what they think, you know, what actions we as a school district or as a board should be going forward with. Because I think that's the only way is to, you know, is to engage the community members that are most affected by policies and have been, and see what ideas they have to move forward.
Thank you, Libby.
Chris, could you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
Yes, absolutely. So for panelists who identify as white or of European descent, how will you engage communities of color beyond family and friends that you may have in order to understand the needs of BIPOC community members? So that's the question for you.
Great, I'd be happy to jump in. So I think it's a variety of things. Engaging with the community organizations that are trusted by those communities, whether it's Apano, Latino Network, Albino Vision Trust, SEI, a whole host of organizations that I've relied on and their leaders to sort of share their perspectives. And because I didn't live in Portland for a while, I got away from Portland nice. So I like people to be really direct and share their perspectives, the negatives and the positives. And also over my 25 plus years in PPS, I have a lot of relationships with individual representatives in schools. teachers, principals of color who know that they can call and share something, sort of the unsanitized version of what's happening in their building. And to me, that's made me a better board member.
Thank you, Julia.
I guess I'm the last one. Can I hear the question once more as well?
Yeah, so to panelists who identify as white or of European descent, how will you engage communities of color beyond family or friends in order to understand the needs of BIPOC community members?
Racism is a very complicated issue here in the country, just in general. And I remember myself at Jefferson, we had social equity trainings on racism, and they were not translated into any foreign language. So for Latino parents and others who didn't speak English, they were barred access to truly participate. And I think we really have to make sure that we really open this up to everyone. You know, just like how we have subtitles here tonight, or you guys are going to have subtitles later on, we have to make sure that everyone is included, who whether or not they speak English or ESL. And we just have to really look into the nitty gritty. And it's conversations. I'll admit I'm a little Portland nice, but you know, it's about having those conversations. Because I went to Jefferson. Jefferson was a very African-American school for a majority of the time I was there. And I was sometimes the only white kid in the room. And it is awkward being the only person of your ethnicity in the room. And obviously that's nowhere near the same extent that others go through. But it is acknowledging that it is sometimes scary being the only person of your race in the place.
Thank you, Brooklyn.
I'm gonna ask you to repeat that question for me as well.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so the question for panelists who identify as BIPOC, how will you engage your colleagues who identify as white or of European descent on the board?
Oh, so that's a great question. I think for me is being intentional with them, you know, letting them come with me when I'm going to do like our listening sessions, and not just going to the, you know, being born and raised here, you know, I know a lot of the established organizations, and we have to go beyond just the established organizations as well. You know, there's a lot of organizations that's not the SEIs and that's not like the Urban League. There's a lot of other organizations and other groups that we need to hear from. And so bringing them along with me to actually listen to what those other folks are saying as well. So I think, like I said, really being intentional, making sure that they're complicit in the work that we're talking about doing. You know, not just sound bites, not just, I call them sound bites. You know, a lot of people throw out the word equity and they throw out, you know, diversity and all that stuff. But then when it comes to putting the dollars behind that work, that's where we need to make sure that they're complicit in the work and not just doing the soundbite piece. So that's kind of my take on, you know, once I get on the board, is how to engage my colleagues, you know, in this type of work and reaching those communities.
Thank you, Gary. Jamie, you want to have the last word here?
Sure. My answer is not Portland nice. I'll say that. It's not my job as a Black woman to educate anyone who's white on what they should or shouldn't be doing in regards to my community. There are plenty of other ways to get opportunities and education around that subject. It's my job to make sure that the voices of my community are elevated and the marginalized voices are elevated, but it's not my job to tell my white colleagues how to interact or intersect in that space. So I have plenty of materials and resources that I would love to pass to them, but it's not my job as a Black woman to ever tell a white woman or to tell white spaces how to do it. I unless I'm going to get paid for that labor, it's not my place or my really desire to do so. So I would definitely use white accomplices to come in, suggest trainings from well-respected people that do these trainings and get paid for them. But I don't want to be that person on the board that they seek out to get the Black opinion.
30 seconds.
That's all.
So Hobbs and I were just talking, and we're getting close to time. We want to honor folks' time. However, we only got to one question from the audience. And so I hope everybody's okay if we just go through one more round of questions before we have closing statements from each of the candidates. So we're just going to go with one more question from Hobbs from the Q&A chat, and then we're going to hear from each of the candidates on their closing statements. 60 seconds each, and we're going to use the progressive stack. I think we're back to the top two on the stack, Hobbs.
All right, thank you, thank you. So just to reiterate what Chris said there, we're running short on time. So I'm gonna do a mashup of a few questions that I got. So I like this question, it was kind of bold. What is your take on the reopening of schools and the decision to have in person while the board is still virtual? And you know, we're talking about this while we're talking about equity and accessibility. I love some of the other comments that came through the chat here. Someone brought up, you know, what are you going to do to support our students who have disabilities, you know, and just who might have be challenged in some way. And just when we're thinking about accessibility and equity coupled with reopening schools, you know, just what's your take on all of that? I'm trying to cover a lot of bases here. And Jamie, you can start.
If I were on the board, I've been on board before, I would make a motion to put on the agenda, going back in person. There's no reason why the board can't meet in person. There's definitely spacing in that room. You can obviously telecast from there. Considering that we were going to make teachers simulcast teaching, I think we can simulcast a board meeting. So my take on that is we need to get back into meeting in person. If we're expecting our children and our teachers and our custodians and our secretaries and nurses to go back in a building, then there's no reason why we can't as board members go back in the building, as we should.
I can jump in since I'm currently on the board. So I support the board going back in and meeting in person. One of the things everybody will find if they get elected to the board, that you're one of 7 people and 1 is not 4. When there's 4 people who want to do something, then you can, then things happen. But I will say for the board, just to give people a sense of what the conversation was, that some people didn't want to come back. Everybody has a different set of health circumstances. Also, board members weren't prioritized in getting the vaccines. So there was a sense that when everybody had access to the vaccine and were fully vaccinated, that was a time that people would be willing to go back. But again, everybody has a different set of circumstances, and there weren't 4 people, and it's not just the board because staff has to show up as well.
30
so
seconds.
At some point, I think there will be a collective decision to go back, but it also will be, I think, after people have had an opportunity to be fully vaccinated.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think we should go back to in person. They also, you know, provide food in those in-person meetings. And personally, you know, when I'm on the school board, I want to be fed. You know, even if it's just cheapo pizza.
I thought your parents were doing that.
Yeah. But no, it is a little strange how the school board has held off on going back in person, where the students have had to go back in person oftentimes. And the fact that we even suggested simulcast makes me wonder, how much do the people making those decisions understand how obtrusive and how just unreasonable simulcast is? I've been in a simulcast class. You don't learn. The teacher is sitting there struggling with the equipment. The equipment's costly. It's just not practical. And it makes me wonder, I personally think it shows that we don't have enough people in these discussions who understand what they're truly talking about, especially with stuff like
30
simulcast.
seconds.
Because with simulcast, it is pretty bad. It just doesn't work. And the fact that anyone even thought it would, I think is a little crazy.
I'm going to chime in here. I have no problem with the board meeting virtually right now. I think we're giving everybody grace, right? And I think if they can carry out the business of the district, they can do that. Like Julia was saying, they have families. There's a lot of circumstances that, health-wise, we don't know about. In terms of the schools, I've appreciated the CDL my daughter has. It's been the first year that she actually enjoyed school. We're transitioning, I don't think it's an either or thing. I think there is going to be a bit of a hybrid, because speaking as a parent, I think I've seen some benefits of this form of learning that the district might want to adopt and have give people access to. So I'm not looking for the board to demonstrate, hey, everything's safe. We're meeting. I mean, that would be great when it happens. We can
30
do that. But right now, parents have had the choice of whether or not they want to send their kids to school, and the kids have, my daughter hasn't, and many people in our community haven't gone back. So it's a difficult issue that, I'm dancing around, but I think the board has done
10.
their job during this time period. Thank you.
I chime in on this as well. So from a personal standpoint, it doesn't matter to me whether they are in the boardroom or not, as long as they can get the business done. I think for me though, it's more about being able to respect other people's reason of if they feel safe to come back or not feel safe. Just like we wouldn't want to mandate, nobody would want to mandate our kids to have to come back to school. I think we just have to make sure that people are doing what they feel is best for them and not impede that because of our own opinions and our own ideology of what we feel is right or not right. So that's just kind of how I would take that. As an adult, you're not going to make me come back to in-person board meetings just because the optics looks good. I'm not comfortable with that. Like Max was saying, we have families, and I'm not going to do anything to put my family in jeopardy if I don't feel that that's comfortable, and I don't feel that no one else has the right to put that on me based on their own opinions and stuff. Thank you.
I think you lead by example, and even though it was the governor's mandate to return to school, I think the board should be moving towards meeting in person. I think the school district should continue and expand its distance learning program for those families that want it, because there are a lot of families out there that want it or need it, or it's been working better for their student. And if you're asking of people, educators, additional time for opinions, and they're willing to give their opinions, I absolutely agree with Jamie. They should be paid for it.
Excellent, everyone. Thank you all so much for your thoughtful responses to each of the questions that came your way today. I'm glad to be the moderator and not the candidate in this situation. You guys did a great job. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna run down the stack. Jamie, Gary, Brooklyn, Libby, Julia, and Max, you will each have 60 seconds to make a closing statement. And then my main man, Hobbs, who's been so awesome to work with, is gonna close us out. So Jamie, whenever you are ready, take it away.
All right, well, first I want to thank you guys for hosting. You did a great job, and this has been a really fun and unique forum compared to some that we had, so thank you. I just want to remind people that I'm authentic, I'm genuine. As Mama Donna said, a lot of people use this as an entryway into politics, but for me, that's not why I'm here. I'm really here just for the schools. I don't plan to run for commissioner or mayor or president of anything. I just want to be in there to fix the schools and make them better. You know, I have 2 of my own kids, and then I have 250 kids at Rosa Parks, and I want all those babies to have the best opportunities they can have. And I think getting behind that podium and starting to try to help make the decisions that can make our schools look more, you know, look the way they need to be for our students is
15 seconds.
why I'm doing it. I will always fight for equity. I will always fight that for community and to make sure that our students and staff and district are all connected and working together as a whole in the journey to get to a successful school district.
Thank you, Jamie. Gary.
Yes, thank you. And yes, also thank you guys for inviting me to this. I think this is a great space to be able to really talk about some of the issues that is important to us. So I thank you for that. I'm gonna keep it simple. You know, a vote for me is a vote for our kids. You know, I try to keep everything in this form, in this motto as kid focused. You know, I deal with a lot of adult stuff, you know, throughout my job, throughout the day. But when we're coming to deal with our kids, you know, everything needs to be our kids centered. If the conversations, if the policies, the procedures, and the practices are not going to directly affect our kids, then that's not a conversation that I need to have. So once again, a vote for me is a vote for our kids. And thank you guys again for having me. I'm Gary Hollins, and I'm running for Portland Public School Board Zone 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate you. Brooklyn.
I think it's very important to try to encourage more younger voices to participate in political events, just like how we had Chris and Hobbs, you know, as our question askers tonight. It's really important to me to try to encourage more youth to participate, and that's partially why I'm running for school board, is because I want to set an example to, you know, my younger friends and to my brother and his peers, and to just youth in general, that you don't need to be scared out of politics. You can enter this. You're going to make a couple mistakes, yes, but you can do it. You can succeed, and you can push the narratives, push what you want to talk about, discuss the issues that you personally felt when you were in our modern school buildings. And, you know, I have no children, you know, so vote for me is not a vote for my kids. It's a vote for my siblings. It's a vote for my peers. And I really want to help them.
Brooklyn. Thank you. Libby, you are next.
Yeah, thank you for hosting as well. The student engagement needs to be #1, and I don't really feel like we're engaging students. We're not, we need all students succeeding, not just white students. And we absolutely have to close that achievement gap, whatever it takes to do that. You know, my daughter has been helped a lot by special services, reading, speech, etc. And I'm greatly appreciate, you know, what that has done for her education. But we need to make sure that's made available to other students as well, and that all students are succeeding. And I'm Libby Glenn in Zone 6.
Thank you, Libby.
Yeah, I hear the baby.
Julia.
I hear the baby. It's okay.
Oh, Mero, I think you're on.
Are you ready for me?
Yeah, go ahead, Julia.
Okay.
I don't know how you're going to follow that baby, though.
I know, that's a hard track. So thanks for hosting this forum. And I clearly didn't get the memo that this was a stepping stone to something else, because this is my 3rd go around. I love serving on the board, and I'm really delighted to have spent time with some of the other candidates tonight. I think our kids are going to be well served by the individuals who are running. I have a track record of working with parents in the community to improve our schools, and I think people find me independent, accountable, student focused. And because of my track record, I've been endorsed by individuals like Governor Barbara Roberts, Stanford Children, all 5 county commissioners, current and former board members, Michelle DePass, Julia Esparza Brown, Lorenzo Poe, people I respect in the community and I've worked with.
15
And
seconds.
for more information about my candidacy, you can go to www.juliaforportlandschoolboard.com. And again, I'm a candidate for Zone 6, and I thank the forum organizers for this opportunity to talk to the community tonight and to better understand my other candidates.
Thank you so much, Julia. Last but certainly not least, Max, take it away.
Thank you very much. Just want to echo what everybody else has said. Really appreciate having the forum. To anybody out there thinking about running for school board, I encourage you to do it. It's not that expensive to get your name on the ballot. It's $15 and you can have a point of view out there, and you get a forum to speak and listen to interesting people. I'm a reading tutor. I've done that for the past 7 years. Throughout my whole life, I've always worked with students from elementary right now, and I used to work with high school students and middle school students. I believe that equity and excellence go together very well. And we as the board can set high expectations for our students, and the students can meet it. And we just have to make sure that we are clear in our goals and in the purpose of education. And I think I can articulate that well. And I really enjoyed the conversation tonight. And you can vote for me, Zone 6. Ballots are due May 18th. Thank you.
Sweet. All right. And Hobbs, take it away.
Wait, I have a question. I thought we weren't allowed to tell people about our websites and stuff.
I made an executive decision.
Are you putting
so
up,
we are?
Some of us, the one at the front half, didn't get to say anything about, we didn't say, go to here, go here. So
I didn't say my website, did I?
No.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I did. I thought it was no soliciting.
Yeah, so here's what we're gonna do to equitize that is, so Hobbs has dropped 2 websites in there. If your website is not there, go ahead and drop it in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to ask.
No, that I appreciate.
Please, everyone, go to shermanforpps.com to learn about some of my policies.
Awesome. Yeah, drop that in the chat, Brooklyn. Yeah, and then Hobbs, do you want to go ahead and close?
Yeah, I can go ahead and do that. First of all, I want to say thank you for all the candidates for coming and representing yourself today. I want to thank all the participants of tonight's forum for motioning your ways out of your bed into your living room to come witness this. And I want to thank everyone on the behind the scenes to make this Race Talk forum possible. Race Talk is in need of funding to continue this programming. So please open up your wallets and donate. And as my mother likes to say, don't forget those zeros. Thank you for coming out, and we will not keep you any longer. Oh, last thing, I lied, I'm going against my word. That ballots are due, I think, what is it, Tuesday, the 14th? May 18th.
And it's too late to mail them.
Yeah, it's too late to mail absentee. You're gonna need to drop it off with your hands in a ballot box.
And just for the record, I have www.kaleconnectingpdx.com, www.garyhollins.com, www.maxmargolis.com. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, Max.
No, .org. That's all.
.org. And then I have shermanforpps.com. And Libby, make sure to announce yours in the audio so that it's in the order.
It's just libbyglenn.com.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for coming, everybody. Have a great night. Thank you to Race Talks. Thank you to Equitable Giving Circle. This has been an honor and a pleasure to get to know everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everyone's time.
Thanks for coming, y'all.
Thank you.
For us to get to know some of your platforms and your positions a little bit better. This is a really important election.
Yeah, thank you all so much for being here.
Rochelle, I thought I didn't realize that voice was your voice until like I was like, that's like an audio thing.